Miami never sleeps, festers. Beneath the neon glow and the swaying palms, the city hums with secrets, mine chief among them. Blood seeps into the cracks of this place, staining the streets with stories of the dead. Some of those stories belong to me, most of them, actually, and for years I've managed to keep it that way. But something is wrong. The dark passenger, my ever-faithful guide, has grown restless. It whispers doubts, gnaws at the edges of my carefully constructed reality. I tell myself it's nothing, that I am still in control. But control is a fragile illusion, and it shattered the moment I killed Lucas Vega. I didn't want to. That's what I tell myself. Lucas wasn't like the others. Wasn't a predator, a monster lurking in the shadows. He was just persistent, too curious for his own good. A rookie cop with sharp instincts and a hunger for justice. He wasn't afraid to ask questions, to dig where others wouldn't. And eventually he found something. One of my slides. A single, damning piece of glass, barely the size of a fingernail, but heavy enough to crush the world I had built. I tried to misdirect him, to lead him away from the truth, but Lucas was relentless. He wouldn't let it go. And so, I did the only thing I could. I broke the code. The moment the blade slid in, I felt it. Something splintering inside me. Not like before, not the usual satisfaction, the cleansing release. This was different. Wrong. Lucas looked at me, confusion in his eyes, then horror. He tried to speak, but all that came was a wet gurgle. I caught him before he hit the floor, lowering him gently, as if that could undo what I had done. But there was no undoing this. Now, the city feels different. The air is heavier, the lights harsher. I move through the days in a fog, my body going through the motions, blood spatter analysis, crime scene reports, awkward conversations with coworkers. They don't notice the difference, but Deb does. She watches me too closely, asks too many questions. "You look like shit, Dex," she says one morning, her eyes scanning my face like she's searching for something beneath the surface. "Rough night," I reply, forcing a smile. She doesn't buy it. And then there's Miami Metro. Lucas' disappearance has sent ripples through the department. They're looking for him. Hard. Batista is leading the charge, his usual easygoing nature replaced with quiet determination. Even Masuka seems subdued. They want answers, and so far there are none. I should be careful, more careful than ever. But I'm not. I'm slipping, making mistakes. Small ones at first, lingering too long at a crime scene, misplacing a report. Then bigger ones, sloppy kills, missed details. I've always been meticulous, a ghost moving through the city, unseen, unnoticed. But now the ghost is stumbling, and then the letters start. The first one arrives at my apartment, slipped under my door. No return address, no name, just a single sheet of paper with 4 words scrawled in black ink. "I know what you did." I stare at the message, my pulse quickening. It could be a prank, a sick joke, but I know better. Someone knows. Someone is watching. The second letter comes 2 days later. This time, it's a police file, Lucas Vega's personnel record. Highlighted in red. Last seen speaking with Dexter Morgan. A warning. A taunt. I scour my surroundings, searching for a sign. A clue. Anything that could tell me who's behind this. But there's nothing. Just the hum of the city, the distant wail of sirens. And then, the phone rings. I answer, heart hammering against my ribs. A voice I haven't heard in years rasps through the line. "Miss me, Morgan?" James Doakes. The dead don't speak. But Doakes was never one to follow the rules. I grip the phone tighter, my mind racing. Doakes is dead. He has to be. I left him to die in that cabin, the explosion wiping away any trace of him. But the voice on the other end is unmistakable. Low, guttural, filled with fury and something else, something colder. "You should have finished the job," he says. "Big mistake." The line goes dead. I stand there, the phone still pressed to my ear, my breath coming in short, sharp bursts. He's alive, and he's coming for me. The dark passenger stirs, restless, whispering warnings. This isn't like before. This isn't some clueless detective sniffing around the edges. This is Doakes, and he's been waiting for years. I glance at the letters spread out before me, the evidence of a hunt I never saw coming. For the first time in a long time, I feel something new, fear. And for the first time, I wonder if this is how it ends. I stand in the dim glow of my apartment, staring at the dead line on my phone. The city hums beyond my window, indifferent to the storm brewing inside me. For years, I have operated in the shadows, unseen, unnoticed, predator among prey. But now the hunter has become the hunted. Doakes. The name alone sends a ripple of unease through my carefully cultivated detachment. He was supposed to be dead, reduced to ash in that Everglades cabin. I saw the fire consume everything, felt the heat on my skin as I walked away, but I never saw a body, never confirmed the kill. Big mistake. The dark passenger coils in my chest, urging me to act, to control the situation before it controls me. But how? Doakes isn't just a cop, he's a soldier, a predator in his own right. And he's had years to prepare, years to study me, to plan. The letters were just the beginning. I gather them up, my fingers tightening around the paper. The ink is smudged in places, the handwriting deliberate, controlled. No fingerprints, no identifying marks, just the message clear and unrelenting. I know what you did. I move to my desk, pulling out a fresh pair of gloves. If Doakes is alive, if he's been watching me, then every piece of evidence matters. I need to be smarter, more careful, no more mistakes. A knock at the door sends a jolt through me. I freeze, listening. Heavy, measured. Not Deb, she would barge in cursing. Not a neighbor, no one visits me. I move silently, retrieving the knife I keep under the counter. Precaution, a necessity. Another knock. I exhale, steadying myself, then open the door just enough to see. Package. Small. Brown paper. No markings. I scan the hallway, empty. The elevator hums in the distance. The faint sound of laughter from the street below. Whoever left this is already gone. I bring it inside, setting it on the table. My pulse is steady, controlled. The dark passenger watches, waiting. I unwrap the package. A tape recorder. Old school. Cassette. No label. I hesitate for only a moment before pressing play. Static. Then a voice. Been a long time, Morgan. Doakes. My grip tightens. You thought I was dead, he continues. You thought you got away with it. But I know you, Morgan. I know what you are. The static crackles, then silence. Then another voice. Lucas Vega. This is Officer Lucas Vega. Badge number 8216. If you're hearing this, something happened to me. I've been investigating something, someone, and I think I found the truth. The recording cuts out. I stand there, the tape whirring in the silence. Lucas recorded this before I killed him. Doakes must have found it. Or maybe he had it all along. The implications settle over me like a weight. This isn't just a game. Doakes isn't here to toy with me. He's building something. A case. A trap. And I walked right into it. A sharp knock at the door again. This time, I don't hesitate. I grab the recorder, slipping it into my pocket as I move to the peephole. Deb. I exhale, forcing my heartbeat to slow. I open the door, plastering on the closest thing to normalcy I can manage. Jesus, Dex, you look like shit, she says, pushing past me. Her eyes scan the apartment, her detective instincts kicking in. I keep my posture relaxed, my expression unreadable. Just tired, I say. She doesn't buy it. She never does. You hear about the case? She asks, dropping onto my couch. I feign confusion. Which one? Lucas Vega, she says, watching me. His disappearance just got bumped to priority status. We're treating it as a homicide. A slow nod. That makes sense. She leans forward, her eyes narrowing. Does it? Because to me, it doesn't make sense at all. Vega was a good cop, smart. He wouldn't just vanish. Someone made him disappear. I feel the weight of the tape recorder in my pocket. Any leads? I ask, careful. She doesn't blink. Nothing solid. But there's something else. something weird. I wait. Doakes, she says. A slow chill spreads through me. What about him? Ask. She sighs, rubbing her temples. His name popped up in the system last week. Not officially, but in the background. Someone accessed his old files, his records, and not just anyone. Someone with clearance. I keep my face neutral. You think it's connected? She shrugs. I don't know what to think, but if someone's looking into Doakes after all these years, it means something. I nod, careful not to let the silence stretch too long. She watches me, her gaze sharp. You sure you're okay, Dex? I offer a tired smile. Yeah, just a lot on my mind. She doesn't push. Not yet, but she will. She stands. Let me know if you hear anything. Okay? I nod. Of course. She hesitates, then leaves. I lock the door behind her. Then I move. The recorder goes into a plastic bag, sealed. It's evidence now, evidence against me. I need to destroy it. But more than that, I need to find Doakes. If he's alive, if he's been watching me, then he has a plan. And I need to stop him before he stops me. I slide on my gloves, my mind already calculating. For years, I have been the predator. Now I am the prey, and the hunt has begun. The city exhales around me, a restless beast cloaked in neon and decay. Miami has always been a place where secrets fester. But now, mine is bleeding into the cracks. Doakes is alive. The words loop in my mind, an intrusive echo that refuses to fade. He isn't just alive. He's been watching, waiting, meticulously setting the stage for my downfall. And Lucas Vega is the thread he's pulling. I move methodically through my apartment, the weight of the tape recorder pressing against me like a loaded gun. Destroying it is the logical step. But logic has taken a back seat to something else, something I never expected to feel. Fear creeps in, curling around the edges of my control like smoke. I push it down, force myself to think. Doakes is a hunter. He's been studying me for years, learning my habits, my weaknesses. He wouldn't have reached out unless he was ready, which means I don't have time to hesitate. I need to find him before he finds me. The problem is, Doakes isn't just a loose end, he's a hurricane. He won't stop until I'm caged or dead. And for the first time, I'm not sure which option he prefers. I slip the recorder into a plastic evidence bag and tuck it into my freezer, deep beneath layers of frozen dinners and forgotten takeout containers. Temporary containment. I can't afford to destroy it yet, not until I know what else Doakes has. I need to move. The night air is thick with humidity as I navigate the streets, my senses dialed to their highest setting. Every shadow feels heavier, every glance lingers too long. Paranoia is a dangerous thing, but in this case, it's warranted. Doakes could be anywhere, watching, waiting. I start with the department, not physically. I'm not reckless enough to walk into a lion's den unprepared. Instead, I do what I do best. I observe. From a distance, Miami Metro hums with late-night activity. Detectives shuffle in and out, their faces illuminated by the harsh fluorescent glow spilling onto the pavement. Deb is inside, no doubt poring over Lucas Vega's case file, piecing together a puzzle that leads straight to me. I should be inside too. My absence will be noticed soon enough. But right now, I have bigger concerns. I move to a nearby building with a clear vantage point, pulling out a pair of compact binoculars. Precautionary measure. I scan the entrance, the parking lot, the side alleys. Then I see him, Doakes, standing in the shadows near an unmarked vehicle, his stance rigid, predatory. He's watching the department, his eyes locked onto the front entrance like a wolf stalking prey. I inhale sharply, forcing my pulse to steady. He's not rushing in, guns blazing. He's waiting. Why? Because he's planning something. I need to get closer. Slipping into the darkness, I navigate the alleyways, my footsteps careful, measured. Doakes was special forces, tracking is in his blood. If I'm not careful, he'll know I'm here before I get close enough to learn anything. I keep my distance, watching as he pulls out a phone. His lips move, but I can't hear the words. Then he disappears into the car, the engine rumbling to life before he pulls away from the curb. I don't hesitate. I slip back to my car, fire up the engine, and follow. The chase is slow, methodical. Doakes isn't rushing, he's leading. I keep several cars between us, my hands steady on the wheel. He takes a winding route, doubling back twice, checking his mirrors. He knows he's being followed. And then he makes a mistake. He stops. Not at a light, not at a stop sign, but in an abandoned lot near the docks. A trap. I pull into a side street, killing my lights, waiting. Minutes pass. Then movement. Doakes steps out of his car, his posture relaxed but controlled. He knows I'm here. He knew the moment I started following him. And now he's waiting for me to make a move. I exhale, my grip tightening on the wheel. This is it. The moment I've been dreading. The moment I've been preparing for. A confrontation is inevitable. But the question is, who will survive it? The night wraps around me like a second skin, thick with salt and gasoline. The docks are empty, save for the occasional flicker of a distant security light and the rhythmic groan of boats rocking against their moorings. Doakes stands in the open, his body language casual, but I know better. He's coiled steel, waiting for an excuse to snap. I stay in the shadows, considering my options. A direct confrontation is reckless. Doakes has always been a blunt instrument, but he's not stupid. If he's been watching me for years, if he's been pulling the strings of this slow-burning nightmare, then he's prepared for anything I might throw at him. Anything except for me vanishing. I ease my foot off the brake, letting my car roll back into the darkness of a side alley. Doakes doesn't move. He knows I'm here, but he doesn't know where. That's an advantage, and I need every advantage I can get. I slip out of the car, moving low, silent, the dark passenger guiding each step. The air is thick with the scent of diesel and rust, the faint tang of fish rotting somewhere beyond sight. I skirt around the lot's perimeter, keeping to the deepest pockets of shadow. Doakes lights a cigarette. The small flare of the lighter illuminates his face. Hardened, scarred, older than I remember. There's something else there, too. Something colder than anger. Patience. He takes a slow drag, exhales a plume of smoke, and speaks, his voice cutting through the stillness. You always were a sneaky motherfucker. I don't move. Don't answer. He tilts his head slightly, as if he can feel me watching. Come on out, Morgan. Let's not drag this shit out longer than we have to. I remain still, my pulse a steady drum. Doakes is baiting me, but I won't bite. Not yet. He takes another drag, rolling his shoulders. You know, I had a lot of time to think after that cabin, after you left me to burn. He chuckles, a low, humorless sound. You must have felt real good about that one. Tied up all your loose ends, right? I watch the cigarette tip glow as he flicks ash onto the pavement. Except you fucked up. He turns slightly, looking into the darkness, his eyes scanning, searching. I flatten myself against a rusting storage container, blending into the night. You should have checked for a body, dumbass, he continues. You really think a little explosion was enough to take me out? Shit. I crawled out of that fire like a goddamn cockroach. The mental image is unsettling. Doakes, burned, broken, but alive. Crawling out of the wreckage I left him in. He shakes his head, muttering. Took me years to put myself back together. Years, Morgan. You have any idea what that's like? His voice tightens, something raw bleeding through. Being buried alive in your own fucking failure? I do. I know exactly what that's like. But I don't say it. Doakes exhales sharply, the anger reining back in. Didn't take long to figure out what I had to do. You were too damn smart to let your guard down. Not at first, anyway. But I knew you'd slip. He smiles, a slow, deliberate thing. And look at you now. You're slipping all over the goddamn place. He knows about Lucas Vega. He knows about the slide. The realization settles over me like a weight. Doakes has been waiting for me to break the code. And I did. I killed an innocent man. And now I have to deal with the aftermath. A slow, calculated breath. My options are limited. Doakes isn't here to arrest me. If he had real evidence, he'd have gone straight to Miami Metro, to Deb. No, this is personal. That means I still have time. But not much. Doakes flicks the cigarette away, straightens. All right, fine. You want to play this little ghost game? Be my guest. Won't change a damn thing. He turns toward his car, pausing just before he reaches the door. You're done, Morgan. I don't need to chase you anymore. You're gonna burn yourself down. He gets in, starts the engine. I stay frozen in place as he pulls out of the lot, the red taillights bleeding into the night. He's not wrong. The code is the only thing that's kept me alive this long. Without it, I'm just another killer waiting to be caught. And Doakes is watching. I exhale, stepping back further into the darkness. This isn't over. Not by a long shot. The night does not end. It stretches on, pressing against me like the weight of a confession unspoken. Doakes is alive. The words cycle through my mind. Relentless, inescapable. He's been watching me, waiting for me to stumble. And I did. Lucas Vega was my mistake, my moment of weakness, and Doakes has been circling like a predator scenting blood. I return to my apartment, locking the door behind me, but the walls feel thinner than before. The space that once held my secrets now feels exposed, fragile. I move through the rooms, checking the windows, the locks, the spaces between the shadows. I am being watched. The letters, the tape, the voice on the phone. Doakes is playing a game I should have seen coming. A slow, methodical dismantling of the world I built. He isn't coming for me with fists or a gun. No, Doakes has learned patience. He wants me to self-destruct. And the worst part? It's working. I move to the freezer, retrieve the tape recorder, weigh it in my palm. The plastic is cold, unyielding, a relic of my failure. Destroying it won't matter if Doakes has copies. He wouldn't be so reckless, not after all these years. He has something else. Something more. The question is, what? I press play again. Lucas' voice crackles through the tiny speaker, his words strained, hushed as if he already knew he was in danger. Been looking into something. Morgan's clean, too clean. No mistakes, no loose ends. But something's off. Something isn't right. The recording jumps, static cutting through like a serrated blade. He's hiding something. I found something. A slide. Blood. Doesn't match any case on record. I think I know what it means. If anything happens to me. Harp burst of static. Then silence. The tape ends. I sit there, staring at the recorder, feeling the weight of Lucas Vega's final words settle into my bones. He knew. Not everything, not the full picture, but enough. Enough to make him dangerous. Enough to make me kill him. And Doakes? He has proof. Or at least he's convinced me that he does. I close my eyes, inhaling deeply. The dark passenger stirs, restless, anxious. It wants control. It wants action. But this isn't a hunt. This isn't a kill. This is survival. And I need to be smarter than Doakes. The problem is, Doakes is already ahead of me. A knock at the door snaps me back into the present. Not Deb. Not now. She would have called first. I move to the peephole, slow, cautious. A man stands outside, dressed in plain clothes, his posture stiff, professional. Not Doakes. Someone else. A cop. I school my expression, open the door just enough to feign casual curiosity. Dexter Morgan? I nod. That's me. The man pulls out a badge. Detective Harris. I need to ask you a few questions about Lucas Vega. The name is a stone in my stomach. I step back, forcing a neutral expression. Come in. He does, his eyes sweeping my apartment with the quiet scrutiny of a man trained to notice details. I keep my movements slow, controlled, leading him to the couch. What's this about? Ask. Harris doesn't sit. He studies me for a moment, then pulls out a small notepad. When was the last time you spoke with Officer Vega? I tilt my head, feigning thought. A few days before he disappeared. He was asking about blood patterns. Seemed eager to learn. Harris nods, jotting something down. And you didn't find that strange? I offer a small shrug. Not really. Rookie cops always want to understand forensics. Makes them better at their jobs. He watches me carefully. You know, Vega mentioned your name in some of his notes. My fingers tighten slightly against my thigh. Oh, he seemed to think you were unusual. I let out a soft chuckle. A lot of people think that. Harris doesn't smile. I keep my expression open, waiting. Finally, he tucks his notepad away. If anything comes to mind, let me know. I nod. Of course. He turns to leave, then pauses at the door. Oh, one more thing, he says, his voice casual. Doakes, you knew him, right? The name is a knife against my ribs. I keep my face passive. Yeah, we worked together. Harris nods slowly. Funny thing, his name popped up in some old case files recently. Nothing official, but it's strange, don't you think? A dead man's record getting flagged. I hold his gaze. That is strange. He studies me for a moment longer, then nods once. Have a good night, Morgan. He leaves, and I exhale. The walls are closing in. Doakes isn't just watching. He's pulling strings, moving pieces. I move to the window, watching as Harris gets into his car and drives away. Then I grab my keys. I need to find Doakes before this spirals further. Before he pulls the final thread. Before I lose control completely. The hunt is on. The night stretches on, thick with tension, wrapping around me like the coils of a constrictor. The city moves as it always does. Restless, hungry. But I am frozen in place, my mind racing through the delicate threads of my unraveling world. Doakes is alive. The reality of it refuses to settle, gnaws at me like a festering wound. He's not just alive. He's been watching, waiting, methodically dismantling the careful life I've constructed. He played the long game, lurking in the periphery, feeding the fire that now threatens to consume me. And he's not alone. The detective, Harris, he's sniffing around, asking questions with the quiet persistence of a man who already knows the answers and is just waiting for me to confirm them. I move through my apartment, every movement calculated, every breath measured. The recorder still sits on my counter, its weight disproportionate to its size. A single cassette holding the echoes of my mistakes, of Lucas Vega's final words. A rookie who should have known better, who should have walked away when the shadows slithered too close. But he didn't, and now he's dead, and Doakes has turned him into a weapon. I replay the conversation with Harris in my mind, dissecting each word, each pause. He knew about Doakes. That wasn't a fishing expedition, it was a confirmation. Someone accessed Doakes' files, someone with clearance. And it wasn't me. Doakes is working the system. I exhale slowly, steadying the tremor in my fingers. The dark passenger watches, waiting, its hunger muted beneath the weight of survival instincts. I have been the hunter for so long, the predator prowling unseen. But now I am the one being stalked. For the first time in years, I feel something dangerously close to fear. I need to act. Waiting is no longer an option. I grab my keys, slipping into the night with the silence of a shadow. The streets blur past in streaks of neon and asphalt, the city humming its usual song of violence and desperation. My destination is clear, though I wish it wasn't. Miami Metro. A risk, but a necessary one. If Doakes has been moving within the system, I need to see how deep he's embedded himself. I need to know what he knows. The building looms ahead, its sterile glow standing in defiance of the corruption that festers within. I park 2 blocks away, slipping into the shadows as I make my way toward the entrance. Inside, the night shift is in full swing. Officers shuffle through reports. Masuka leans over a desk, chuckling at something inappropriate, and Deb is in her office, her face lined with exhaustion, her fingers drumming an erratic rhythm against her desk. I move past them unnoticed, my body slotting into the rhythm of the department with practiced ease. My workstation greets me with the cold familiarity of routine, my fingers moving swiftly over the keyboard as I access the internal database. Lucas Vega. The case file is flagged, marked as high priority. Photos of his apartment, his car, his last known whereabouts. And then, buried deeper, Doakes. His name lingers like a specter, tied to a series of unauthorized access points. Someone has been digging, pulling old reports, surveillance footage, incident logs. Doakes is reconstructing his own death. I click through the records, my mind piecing together the puzzle even as my pulse pounds in my ears. There are gaps, places where files should be but aren't. Someone has covered their tracks well. And then a new file. I hesitate only for a moment before opening it. A surveillance photo. My breath stills. It's me. Not at a crime scene, not at work, this is different. A grainy image, taken from a distance, but unmistakable. Me outside Lucas Vega's apartment. The timestamp is damning. The night he disappeared. Doakes isn't just watching. He's documenting, building a case. A cold dread settles in my gut. I erase my digital footprints, close the files, and slip away before anyone can notice my presence. By the time I reach my car, the city feels different. The air is tighter, the shadows deeper. The walls are closing in. I need to find Doakes, and I need to end this. The hunt is no longer about survival. It's about inevitability. One of us isn't walking away from this. The city breathes in the dead hours of the night, exhaling shadows that stretch long and hungry under flickering streetlights. I've always been comfortable in those shadows, a ghost moving unseen, unnoticed. But tonight, the darkness feels different. It clings to me, suffocating, pressing in with the weight of something inevitable. Doakes is watching, waiting. I grip the wheel tighter as I navigate the streets, my mind sifting through the delicate strands of my unraveling reality. The surveillance photo, the letters, the tape, each piece meticulously placed, carefully orchestrated. Doakes isn't just hunting me. He's dismantling me, piece by piece, bleeding me out slowly. The dark passenger seethes, coiled in anticipation. It wants me to act, to end this. I don't disagree. I park a block away from the address I pulled from the Miami Metro database. Doakes has been careful but not careful enough. His digital footprints are faint but traceable. He's been using an old safe house, a location buried deep in military records, long forgotten by anyone who wasn't trained to look, except I was. The house is unassuming, tucked at the edge of a quiet, neglected neighborhood. No lights, no movement, but I know he's inside. I step out of the car, moving with the practiced silence of a predator. The air is thick with the scent of damp earth and decay, the humidity wrapping around me like a second skin. My pulse is steady, my grip on the knife in my pocket firm. I approach the house, testing the door. Locked, expected. A flicker of movement in the window. He's waiting for me. I inhale slowly, the dark passenger whispering its approval as I move to the side, pressing against the wall. I listen. No sounds beyond the usual nocturnal symphony of the city. But Doakes isn't sloppy. He's controlled, calculated, just like me. I slip around to the back, finding the secondary entrance. The lock is old, worn. It gives under careful pressure. The door creaks open. Darkness greets me. I step inside. The air is stale, heavy with something I can't quite place. I move carefully, my senses dialed to their highest setting. A faint glow from the hallway ahead. A room. A trap. I press forward. The light flickers, casting jagged shadows against the walls. A small table sits in the center of the room, a single object resting on its surface. A tape recorder. I exhale slowly, stepping closer. The chair across from it is empty, but the presence in the room is suffocating. He's here, somewhere, watching. I press play. Static crackles, then his voice. Low, measured. You always think you're the smartest guy in the room? Don't you, Morgan? I don't move. Don't breathe. You probably think you've got this all figured out, that you're in control. A pause, a quiet chuckle. But you're not. Not this time. A rustle of movement behind me. I turn. Too late. The impact is sudden, sharp. A fist colliding with my ribs, knocking the breath from my lungs. I stagger but recover quickly, twisting, striking out. Doakes is faster. He slams me against the wall, his grip iron around my throat. You really thought you could sneak up on me? His breath is hot, laced with fury and something else. Something colder. You don't get it, do you? You lost the second you broke the code. I grit my teeth, my fingers tightening around the knife in my pocket. He sees it, anticipates it. A knee to my gut sends me reeling. The knife clatters to the floor. Doakes doesn't let go. His grip tightens. "You think I don't know what you are?" His voice is steady, controlled. "I've spent years putting this together. Years, Morgan. Every mistake you made, every little slip-up. You were never as careful as you thought." I struggle, but his strength is relentless. "You killed Lucas Vega," he says, his voice almost matter-of-fact. "An innocent man. That's what makes this different. That's what makes this the end of the line." The air in my lungs thins. Black spots dance at the edges of my vision. Then sirens. Distant but approaching fast. Doakes hesitates. Just for a second. But it's enough. I twist, breaking his grip, stumbling back. My vision swims, but I force myself to move. The sirens grow louder. Doakes steps forward, his gaze locked onto mine. "You hear that?" His voice is calm, confident. "That's your reckoning, Morgan." I don't hesitate. I turn and run. Out the door. Into the night. The city swallows me whole. The sirens wail like hungry ghosts, closing in. I move through the alleys, my breath ragged, my mind racing. Doakes had backup. He knew I would come. He wanted this. The hunter has become the hunted. And for the first time, I don't know how this ends.